Hey, what's up guys? Node Investor here. Time for a weekly recap. Hope everyone is doing well today. We're going to cover a few things today. Of course, we will look at the charts. I am going out on a limb and hoping to say this might be a quick one. Maybe. Famous last words. I've said that before and ended up on the mic for much longer than I expected. So assuming nothing crazy happens on the charts while I'm doing this, see if we can make it a shorter stream than usual. Let me post some links. I will let everybody know that we are alive and ready to rock. Look like we got some folks coming in. S13 in the house. Aloha. I hope you're really in Hawaii. That'd be awesome. And let's see what else we got here on the news. Not a whole lot of the news that I'm going to really point out. I didn't point out yesterday in the video. Mostly just the volatility continues to narrow here. Price continues to constrict, and we'll look at the kind of the altcoins and the coin market cap stuff here. Let me see here. We'll get to it here in a minute. I'm going to give everybody a little bit of a time to come online, catch up. All right, traveling. All right, I'm going to make a list. So for sure, just start throwing out names if you got something you want me to look at, and I'm going to just jot them down as I talk and read comments at the same time, and we'll go from there. So yeah, we'll take a look at that. There's a few names that I'm going to watch. Tron, EOS, Cosmos has been on a run anyway. Atom, we'll take a look at that one. There's a handful of names, but feel free to point out any other ones you want to look at here. Let me see here. Okay, cool. Posted the links, ready to rock. Let's get to it here. So looking at the chart, of course, BTC. If you watched my video yesterday, I did go into this in a lot more depth in terms of what I'm looking at here, some of the key price levels, but we will certainly watch that again here, kind of just looking at that. Yesterday was looking good, 2 green days in a row. Pulling back here today, if we dial it in here a little bit on the 4-hour chart, back and forth here around these moving averages as price just continues to narrow. It's been a relatively quiet week though. If you look at the daily chart here, just kind of going back to the week, I mean, we started the week on a little bit of a pullback mode here, found some support around that 9,800 level, bouncing, pulling back, but I mean, the tone has been over the last several weeks, just this, just this low volatility, price constricting, a lot of whipsaw, right? If you're taking signals generally over a range bound market, right? If you're using oscillators or if you're using that sort of thing for signals, buy and sell signals, there's going to be a lot of whipsaw in these scenarios just because when price really narrows. And let me give you an example. I mean, look at the RSI, right? The RSI is just kind of going flat. The MACD histogram is getting really small and tight, and that's just not unusual during these flat, low volatility periods. If we were to pull up Bollinger Bands or Keltner channels or something like that, you can see that the clouds would be narrowing down here as the general average true range has just really been constricted. Now, if you're trading on margin, if you're trading lower time frames, certainly there's trades to be made, but relatively speaking, it's a small range. I mean, yeah, it's a 10-15% range, but we were seeing days back here where the price was moving up and down 10-15% in a single 24-hour period. And so this, these small 3-4% moves here are relatively small for the crypto space, just because we're generally used to some higher volatility, right? It's like we saw out here. So it's all good, it's normal, it's just a little bit of a consolidation mode that we're seeing, but price is coming to a little bit of a head here. I mean, you're seeing this consolidation happen, this descending resistance trend line that continues to contain price, and on the downside you've got some support level that has so far held up around that lower $9,000 range, and that's where the buyers have continued to step in. Do we continue to see that? Has yet to be seen. And like I've said, I'm sounding like a broken record now, but kind of going into this Q4 time frame, I do expect we'll begin to see some increase in the price volatility again here. Going to the weekly chart, you know, this so far is looking positive. I mentioned yesterday the potential for an undercut below this support, and you know, that's kind of the path I'm leaning on. I'm hoping in a way to see that. For those of you that are familiar with kind of like the ABC corrective patterns, you know, that could be setting up here something like that, a little bit of an ABCD pattern where you do undercut. The fib ratios kind of line up with that, you know, not perfectly, but that helps there. If you do a fib retracement on the entire move, I usually start with the impulse leg, but if we start with the breakout move there that we saw on April 1st, you can see that we've already come down to about the 50% mark, rallying here again. But if it doesn't hold, then 618 is generally the key ratio that we want to see hold, and that's down in this range. So that's really around 8K is where that 618 retracement level goes if it continues to pull back from that level. Now, if you do the fib retracement from the exact bottom, that's another way of looking at it here. That's not as conservative as a view. If you know, by that I mean you're taking a wider range, so the ratios are bigger. And the 618 at that scenario is way down at 7,200. So, you know, that's a wider range. Generally, I will take the more kind of conservative path when I'm doing these fib retracements, because you do see a little bit of front running sometimes into those, and so it'd be interesting to see if we do break. So 58% or 50% is at 8,900 basically, and the 618 is at 7,800, right around that 8K. So be interesting to see that. But the moving averages on the weekly chart are catching up. Price is holding up. The 22 EMA right now is now at $9,000. So it certainly has had some time to catch up here, and the volume during this consolidation is really starting to lighten up. And again, that coincides with the low volatility, lower volume, sideways trending range. I mean, look at this weekly candle. It's relatively small. I know there's still 2 days left in the week. I don't want to jinx it, but it's relatively small here, especially compared to last week. Price has been trading inside of last week's price range all of this week. So you can see this green candle here, the current red candle, which is this week, has just been very tight within that. And so all around, small relative range here. Some of the key levels to be watching here on the way up. Really, the first level that I'm watching is this $11,000 range. Closing above that would start to look positive. One, it would get it above this trend line, and two, it would get it above this recent resistance that we've seen here through the month of August. And so that would be kind of your first test, and then the next big test is basically around that 12K, that nice little round number. So we got 11K, 12K, and as I mentioned yesterday, above that 12K level, there really is not a lot of long-term resistance, meaning any holders of Bitcoin at that point, for the most part, are going to be in the money, and there's going to be very little reason to sell other than getting some sort of, you know, parabolic exponential type of move again. And so if we zoom out, I mean, if you look at the history of Bitcoin, and I know there's more, this is on Coinbase. If we pull up Bitstamp, you can get all the way further back. But I mean, even started at 2015, right? If you look at all the price above 12K, which is right, let's put it right on the money right there. I mean, in the entire history of crypto, you know, Bitcoin has spent what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks back here above 12K, and you could argue, you know, some of those were under that price point. You know, you got these wicks below that, and then here in recent time, I mean, we've had a few, not even entire weeks above it. You've had brief periods, you know, a few days above 12K before price pulled back, and so there's just very little resistance above that, meaning, you know, people that are underwater holding crypto at those levels. I would argue that, you know, if anybody bought back here, one, it was either small that you're still holding and you managed to actually hold through that, or two, most of those people probably capitulated, maybe sold some way along the way down here, perhaps have bought back in, but they're probably not holding that last buy, you know, at $15,000 Bitcoin. I know there are some. There's the stories of people who jumped in right at the top. That's always the case, but it's likely not the big money crowd. If you add another indicator on here, if you add a VPVR, which is basically the volume profile for the visible range, it doesn't sound too fancy. All that tells you is basically, you know, how much buy and sell volume was traded at a certain price range. And you can see here the vast majority of it right here for this visible range is back between, you know, 6 and 12K. and you can see almost exactly at the line here, the visible range volume really lines up. And again, that just kind of supports that notion of, there really wasn't a lot of trading done, a lot of buying and selling done in the history of time above those 12K levels. So just something to make note of. It's going to be interesting to see if we do get a breakout above 11K and then finally above 12K. Does it consolidate here between 12 and 13 before really starting to take off and test those old all-time highs, near that 20K level again? So that's going to be the interesting level if we see a breakout on the upside here in the near term. What does it do around that 12K level, and does it begin to start taking off again? This first run that we had this year, it was coming off of the back of a very big move already, so it was just not going to be sustainable if it continued higher. It needed to consolidate, take a breather, and we've seen that now. Now that we've seen that breather, right, a move from this point up would be much more sustainable versus a move from 4K to 14K like we saw, in Q2. That was an amazing move, triple digit move percentage wise. And so, from here, a double would be a lot easier to do once consolidating, right? So could you go from 10 to 20K? I mean, you certainly could. Not saying that's going to happen, but it's a lot more sustainable to do that versus doing it from down here where you've just went from 4K to 14K. At that point, getting to 20 is a lot harder to do because, things are getting overbought. Our RSI was getting out there. We were getting a little bit euphoric. Now we've seen a little bit of consolidation, so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Of course, that's only looking at the upside. If we look at the downside, which one must do if you're considering all scenarios, looking at the downside here, below that near-term support that we've seen established around the low 9K range, next major support, there's several layers to look at. 8,800, and then there's this big level down here around 7,500, and then of course, if it really gets crazy, right around that mid-6 level, which was kind of the big resistance level on the way up, which honestly, I thought it was going to be a lot bigger of a resistance level. It really wasn't. I mean, price was just on a tear, pretty much just sliced right through 5K, right through 6K, went straight to the 7Ks before really pausing a little bit. So, probably not that big of a resistance or support level on the way down either. So I'm thinking, 7K, mid-K if it really gets crazy and starts to sell off here. So if you do a measured move and you call this a descending triangle and you say, hey, if this is a descending triangle, what's the measured move? It takes it way down there. I mean, if you extrapolate a breakout from here, you can see that takes it down to 6K, depending on where you measure it. If you take a conservative measurement and you go from this last swing high to the support level, it's a little bit smaller, but still takes it down to right around that mid-6 level. So a couple of ways to look at it. Fibonacci is probably the more one that I'd be using there versus a measured move. And then, of course, horizontal price support and resistance levels. Those are all around generally your best support and resistance. Horizontal price resistance and support. Moving averages, fib levels, ratios, all that stuff certainly help, but you'd be surprised at how often price runs exactly to a support or resistance level and then turns around at that point. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but those are the key levels to be watching. On to the BTC side, probably won't dive much more into that. I mean, we could look at the 4-hour chart, but honestly at this point it's just kind of in a range, a lot of noise, so we'll move on for the sake of time, keep things a little bit faster here today. Let me look at the comments here. Let me see. You want to look at BAT? We've got BAT. We'll look at Raven. What else do we got here? Have I seen the marijuana sector lately? I have not. Let me go take a look at that. What else are we looking at? Link. Link is getting smashed again, of course. Did break support. We've been watching Link here for a little bit. All right. And yeah, we'll take a look at one. Cool. All right, thanks for the comments, the feedback there. 0x Chad in the house. Zilliqa. All right. Cool. All right, guys, let's cycle through the coin market cap real quick. Keep throwing the names out for sure, and I'll come back to them. But let me take a look at some of these here. So, looking at the coin market cap, and this is an eye chart for those of you on the stream, so I apologize, and I'll kind of run through this here quickly. But just kind of looking at the top 20 names here, you can see over the last 7 days, relatively small moves. There's a couple of them that are bigger, right? Binance Coin up 14% over the last 7 days. Bitcoin Cash SV, who cares? But then, everything else is kind of relatively small. Dash had a big move here today. That popped it up, 13% over the last 7 days. Ethereum Classic pulling in, continues to pull in after that little pump we saw down 10%. But, nothing major. Everything else is just small, right? +3, -4, 0, +1. So it's been a relatively small day. If you go into a little bit lower down the list, certainly Cosmos has been a big winner. That's already been on a move already, up 50% basically on the week, on the last 7 days. I'm trying to see if anything else really stands out here that is worth noting. KuCoin shares, a lot of the token exchanges have been on a run. BitTorrent's looking pretty good here. Was moving strongly a few days ago. And that's really it. Algo down 11%. MaidSafe Coin, there's a name from yesteryear. But, nothing exciting yet. I mean, there's always a few names out there, but BTC dominance still at that 70% market cap overall. So certainly dominating by far. I mean, if you look at number 2, Ethereum, right, 7%, Bitcoin Cash 2%, Ripple 4%, right? So the all others category, which is basically everything outside of the top 10, it's like 13%. So and I remember back in here when it was hitting the 20s, right, 23%. So certainly the alts have already taken a beating. Yeah, you have a good point there on Binance, volume down 33%. I expect that's going to be the case for a little while with the U.S. traders being banned now, and that's official as of this week. So was Dash a Coinbase pump. But yeah, I mean, just it's going to be interesting how that plays out. But all around, I mean, at the end of the day, Bitcoin just continues to dominate here in terms of overall crypto dominance here. So we'll go to the charts here. Let's take a look at some of those. I'll dial it in here on the multi-time frame look here and just kind of jump between the two here. What else? Let me close this chart. We don't really care about that anymore. Looking at the alerts here. Overall market cap is bullish, but for those of you that follow this, and I do post this from time to time inside the Slack group, it's a little bit of a whipsaw right now. It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. We go from caution to green to red just because of the relatively flatness in the price. And in those scenarios, I just put a little less weight on oscillators and those type of indicators. Going to the watch list, there were a little bit more names added to that here today. This is an automated watch list based on that proprietary BMI indicator, DOC, Iota, Ontology, Dash, Aeon. Looking at the Bittrex names, which mostly small names there. So we'll come back to some of those to see how those charts look. Let me go through the list that you guys have posted already. I'll start with some of the big names here first. Looking at ETH BTC first. ETH BTC, and I mentioned this and I talked to it quite a bit during the last stream in terms of some of the bullish divergence that we've been seeing here form on these daily charts, where you've got these new lower lows being formed, but the RSI MACD has not been confirming, and now you're seeing a potential higher daily low form. And this is what you want to see, right? If things are going to start turning around, you want to see that initial low and then kind of a higher low set, and things really start moving from there. But we also want to see volume come in if we get that scenario here. You're seeing ETH kind of finding a little bit of a low point here on the hourly charts. That's the same thing on the 4-hour view here. If we zoom in, back above the longer term 50 EMA on the 4-hour view, getting above these moving averages. So interesting there that it's actually putting in a little bit of a signal there on the indicator, a little bit of a buy signal, ETH versus BTC. The big thing that I'm always curious about is, how is this going to react once Bitcoin breaks out of range, right? Because it will break out of range eventually. I mean, this consolidation here won't continue forever. It's just not going to go flat. Eventually, we're going to break out of this range, and that's always the million-dollar question, right? If Bitcoin breaks higher, what's the scenario, right? How do the alts react? If Bitcoin breaks lower, what's the scenario? And the question is always, should you be in Bitcoin or the alts, or if Bitcoin breaks lower, should you hedge in cash or stables or something else until there's a low? And that's kind of always the tricky question, if you will. But in the near term, right, if Bitcoin just continues to stay flat, some of these alts could be good potential near-term trades. ETH showing a little bit of a reversal there on the upside. Looking at ETH USD, it's going to be a little more like the Bitcoin side of things in terms of flatness, not a lot of volatility, very range bound here over the last several days. On the upside, I'd be watching 185, and I pointed this out in the last the last time we were looking at this, and you can see here on the daily chart. Let me go to the big chart here so it's easier for you guys to see. So if you go to the big chart, the daily time frame, let's zoom in here a little bit. You know, this resistance level down here, things are really just kind of tightening below that. So that's basically around that one, you know, the mid 180s range, 182, 185. Getting above that would start to change the tone here to look a lot more positive. Right now it's just kind of bouncing into that. We want to see that little bit of a breakout into that range, and that would really start to turn the corner. That get the 10 EMA on the daily chart back above the 22. There'd be a bullish crossover. That'd be the first time we see the 10 above the 22 since back here in mid-July. So it's been certainly a confirmed downtrend for quite some time. And technically speaking, just looking at, you know, pure technicals, it's still in a downtrend until we get some more confirmation to the upside. But very near term versus BTC, it is holding its own. So it's going to be interesting to see if we start to see some of these alts outperform. We did see a little bit of outperformance on the big cap names here recently, looking to see if we can get some more follow through to the upside. I'm going to jump ahead. I'm going to go to EOS BTC. EOS continues to consolidate in a bullish fashion. I'm liking this one. Full disclosure, I actually picked up a position on EOS, so I'm watching this here. I like this little bull flag consolidation on that 4-hour chart and that daily chart, and kind of just pulling back on lower volume, and it offers a relatively low risk entry point. You don't got to give it much. The downside on the daily chart, I mean, the moving averages are just right below the current daily candle, and so, you know, if it starts to really lose some of those levels, then it's kind of an easy get out of the way for me. But for now, still holding up relatively well. The thing I like about this is the consolidation had lower volume. Now, if we do see a break higher and it takes out the highs that we saw here, the relative highs, right around 3,800, I'd certainly want to see high volume on that move on the way up. So that's what I'm going to be paying attention to if price continues to move higher. EOS USD. Looking at it here, very similar price action here, just kind of a flat chart as it pulls back here. 4-hour chart has found some support around that 362 level, 363, and in around right there, but still very tight. So kind of getting back over 380 would be nice, would start to trigger some more upside confirmation. And so for now, I'm liking it, I'm gonna stay with it. Again, it's gonna be easy to get out of the way if it starts to break down, just because it's a relatively tight range. On the way up, if it continues higher, breaking over this most recent highs, call it 395, then I'm going to be looking for around 420 and then about 440s on the way up if it continues higher there. So that's EOS. Tron. Let's go look at Tron. Tronics. So looking at the Tron, again, daily chart, same story as the rest. Looking at the 4-hour chart, it is forming a higher low. So definitely worth noting there. We've had that pullback, found a low. We saw a little bit of a rally right to the 50 moving average here on the 4-hour chart, pulling right back, making a higher low, about to test that moving average again. So it's going to be interesting if we take that out. If it takes that out, that's going to be positive. Of course, getting back over, what is that, 157 on the BTC pair would really start to confirm that that was a higher low. Now we're looking at a higher high, and so things could really start to pick up at that point. So definitely worth noting there. How's it look on the USD side? Tron, you know, pretty similar price action on the USD side, right? You found that resistance right there, testing it right now. Some volume coming in here. 1-hour chart really sitting tight right here. So that's interesting there. Of course, the daily chart looks pretty brutal still. It is forming a higher low potentially on this daily chart, but definitely a long ways from confirming a trend change. A little bit more of a near-term potential reversal there on Tron. BAT. Looking at the BAT BTC first here. Let's see what we got. This is the daily view on BAT, really flattening out. And let me go to the daily chart, the big chart here, to kind of show you guys this. And this is what I'm going to be watching for several of the alts, right? If you go to the weekly charts even, I mean, just they've been in this crazy downtrend for months now. Just, you know, huge reversals on most of those alts. But if you look at the broader charts, you know, a lot of them are starting to kind of, a lot of them are starting to do kind of this flattening out here. Now, that means there are finding some support, but it could just as easily break lower and then you see a quick drop lower. But what you want to start finding is, you know, those support levels being built, some accumulation zones starting to be established there. And once they start to break out of that resistance on the overhead side, then that's really when things start to get moving. But for now, you're just kind of seeing this flattening out of some of these charts. At least, hey, the weekly charts not yet, but at least on the daily charts, they're starting to flatten a little bit. And that corresponds a little bit with the divergence that you're seeing here, letting the RSI and MACD cool off a little bit as they go sideways there. Let's see here on the shorter time frames, looking at BAT, you know, I'm not seeing any kind of confirmed buy signals or anything. In fact, you got a little bit of a double top here on this 4-hour chart, so getting back above that, you know, these levels right here would be a kind of negating some of that bearishness. Certainly the 1-hour chart doesn't look positive, and of course the daily chart still looks bearish there on that side. BAT USD, you can do USDC on Coinbase, a little bit range bound here, so again, nothing. It just looks like it's really holding out by a thread here above this support, above 16.2. Below that, looks like a breakdown of support. Could see a sharp leg lower. That reminds me of XRP, and let's go to XRP real quick because that one is another one that's looking like potentially breaking lower here, and it's sitting right at support. You can see here just on the daily chart, just really tight level there. I mean, very flat at the bottom. Certainly a classic descending triangle at the lows, so I'd be cautious on this one. If it takes out this most recent high here, that's positive. That'll certainly negate it, but on the way down could be a quick move lower if it decides to break lower. So XRP, still XRP not looking good, but hey, we've been saying that for a while here, right? I mean, XRP, come on. Yeesh. Yeah, speaking of XRP, look at lumens. Holy moly. Stellar lumens. All of you guys are selling stellar lumens, and you didn't even tell me. You should have told me before you started selling it. Look at that. Brutal. No love for the lumens. All right. Let's see here. What else are we looking at here? I'm looking at the... comments. All right, so I've got some of the other ones. Adam, looking at Cosmos, has been one of the stronger names here as of late. Going to that 4-hour chart. Oh, they keep airdropping. That's probably why. Going to the 4-hour chart here, it's had a nice run. There are some slight divergences showing up. Not a whole lot, but I mean, you could argue there's a slight RSI divergence there. Very minor on the MACD histogram, as price has made a new relative high here. The trend is your friend. It's still holding up above this, above the 10 EMA is what I'd be watching here first. This little EMA pair on the 4-hour chart. So 10 EMA, 22 EMA. That keeps it above this prior breakout point here. If it starts to lose that level, then that will begin to confirm that divergence on the way down. So that's really the level I'd be watching here on this guy. Certainly has been one of the stronger names here off the lows recently. Had that nice initial run last week, up 56%, pulled right back, and then here a pretty nice little run, additional 31%. So, you know, in the last week or so, up 80%. I mean, a very strong move for these names. You know, one of the few kind of big winners here as of late. A lot of volume too on the way up here. How's that pullback line up here? I'm just curious. That's actually pretty good. It's almost a perfect 382 retracement on that pullback here. And let me show you what I mean by that. Let's do this real quick so we can hide these other candles. You can see on the pullback here, it had that initial rally. That's where it paused. Let me zoom in for us here. And if you do a fib retracement, you know, from the swing low to this high here, and you can actually extend that out a little bit if you want to get the exact high of the wicks there. Here's 382 on the way down, and that certainly is where price began to find a little bit of a low point, and then we saw the rally higher this week. So pretty interesting to see that play out there. Always curious to see how those levels line up. Cool. All right, let's see what else here. Icon, yeah, look at that guy. Let's see, Raven. The Ravencoin. I'm gonna go to the daily chart. Yeah, it's one of those flattening out names again. And a lot of them, I mean, if you factor in this giant move we saw on some of these names, I mean, this looks tiny back here. And so you might have to zoom in or take log off to, you know, kind of factor in some of the relative percentage moves here, right? Because even a move up to here, right, that's 30%. That's a big move. But if you zoom out and you look at the big charts, like, oh, that's nothing. That's a little blip. But you know, if you're trading, it's certainly a big move, right? So you got to kind of zoom in when things are that squashed. But for now, I mean, the chart on Raven, right? I mean, until I see some more bullish signals, some more upside, it's still very much in a downtrend. 10 EMA is below the 22 on the daily chart. You still got that pattern of lower lows and lower highs. I mean, the one positive, if there's any positive on some of these, is price is starting to flatten out a little bit, but we're far cry from saying alt season. All right, let's see here. There was a few more. Link USD. Let's see, you're getting the smackdown here today. Let's go to Tether. Yep, and you know, I mean, this is not surprising. We already mentioned this last time when we were looking at this blue zone up here. It was consolidating a couple weeks ago. We kept pulling this one up on the live stream, and I said, you know, it's just range bound, but if it breaks below that $2 level, it could very quickly be at the 150, 160 level, and here we are, right? It's at 155, so it's just kind of the natural course, right? These charts tend to follow the path of least resistance. It's already been in a downtrend. It was finding some support. Unfortunately, it finally broke support, was unable to quickly recover, went sideways. Moving averages are catching up, getting a little bit more of a dump to the downside. If you like Link, I guess the positive is it's at the next kind of little support level, and so if you're optimistic on it, this might be where you want to take a look at it and see if potentially it starts to find some new support here at this level. It's already come off quite a bit. I mean, Link, remember, had that little mini parabolic move, but it basically went from $1 to $4 in no time. If you go to the weekly chart, you can see that very clearly here. I mean, here's the dollar mark, you know, and 3 weeks later it was sitting at 450, and it's just kind of been grinding lower, retracing all of that ever since. And you know, there was some commentary out there about the founders kind of dumping it, or one of the founders and all that good stuff. You know, and I know that's certainly putting some overhead pressure on the price. All right, let's see here. ETH, yeah, ETH is looking nice. Link, we did Link one. Let's do the other ones here real quick, the big names. Litecoin, ever since the halvening, Litecoin's, well, even before the halvening. This is the halvening back here, but it's just not a whole lot happening here on the BTC front. Litecoin, $1. Generally, the chart I'm a little bit more interested in here. It's right at some support, but honestly, it doesn't look too positive for Litecoin right here. $60 is kind of a key level. If you go back here, that was the big breakout point that we saw on April 1st. That was the same day that Bitcoin broke out. Litecoin was already on a rally, had already come off that mid-20s level, went straight up to 60. Really tight consolidation. I mean, that was a classic ascending triangle formation there that you could have, you know, very easily bought the breakout of, and that was a solid breakout on the way up. And you know, just had a nice rally this year, certainly up to 140 bucks or whatever it was, and just kind of on the way down here. So 60 level is going to be interesting to see if that holds, if we start to see some support showing up there. But all in all, not too positive looking. It's a big round top. All right, 0x. Looking at 0x, flattening out here a little bit. Some RSI drifting higher here, still below the moving averages on the daily charts, still trending lower for sure. Let me see on the shorter time frames. Do we see anything good? This is daily over here on the left. This is 4 hour here on the right. It keeps bouncing right into this moving average, and so that might be something worth noting if it finally can hold above it and start to trend higher. You know, did the same thing back here on the 4 hour time frame. So that might be one to be watching there on the 4 hour if it can get above that. 1 hour, I don't know, that's just choppy on the 1 hour, so I'd be watching 4 hour daily chart on that guy. Let me see here. ZIL. Yeah, Eesh. These crap coins are us today, guys. Oh, my. Yeah, Zill. Zill had such potential, too. Remember Zill? All right, let's see here. One's really coming off. I mean, it's even below the exchange debut price. New relative lows. Is this new all-time lows? It is new all-time low price versus Bitcoin for the Harmony. And all these IEO coins, they've just been so volatile. Matic's another one. I mean, they're hit or miss, right? But this one's probably better looking than one at this point. It is finding some support, consolidating on the 4-hour chart. So I'd like to see if does it start to hold up above this. And this is kind of a nice little range. So definitely range bound. If you like Matic, right, it's right at support. So buy in front of support, sell resistance, kind of a little bit of a range trade. That's certainly something to make note of there. Could be a potential here. Not my cup of tea. And we covered most of these here. Cardano. Looking at the Cardano. Oh, wrong one. Cardano Canadian. Let me go BTC here. Cardano Canada. So looking at this guy here, a similar story to some of these other names where there are some bullish divergences starting to show up as price flattens out a little bit. But ultimately, we want to see some confirmation. We want to see these guys take out some of this resistance here. So this is on the BTC pair. Again, positive the fact that it's finally flattening out, finding some support. Just like EOS and ETH, right, had that initial drop here a few days ago, rallied, pulled back. I want to see that higher low set. If it starts to close above this over the weekend, getting above that, that really starts to look positive, because then it starts to show that, hey, maybe this tone is changing here on the daily. Maybe we're going to start to see some more volume coming in on the upside. And for the big cap names, there are several that are starting to look that way. Whoops, I closed out my volume. And so that's certainly something I'm going to be watching there on some of the big cap names. If we start to see those higher lows formed on the daily charts here. Let's go back to the... No, I didn't save it. It's okay, I'll add it back in later. Can't flatten out more than that. It could. That's what we could have said the same for some of these other names, but oh my goodness, I know. Let's see here. How's Cardano BTC look on this view? Yeah, 4-hour view. Yeah, just tough set of names here. What are some of the names on this here? So Neo, no one's asked for Neo. Dash, Ontology, Iota. Let's see how some of those look real quick. Neo. Looking at the Neo BTC here. Just kind of sitting tight at the lows here. Hasn't been showing a whole lot of life as of late. How's the dollar? Went from $20 down to $8. Keeping an eye on this one here. If we can pop back over 925, Neo starts to look good again, I think, for the short run. Ontology. Man, I'm looking forward to the days where we start to see some of those multi-day double-digit gains again. Those are fun. I like trading altcoins in those environments. These environments here, altcoin trading is, Remember $195 Neo? Oh my god. Don't tell anybody. We're at $8. Oh. Remember $1,400 ETH? Yikes. All right. What was the other one? I was going to pull up Dash BTC on Polo. How's that trading these days? Some volume coming in. That was on Coinbase apparently. Dash USD. A little bit of a spike. See if that translates into anything more than just a short-lived reaction spike, which is usually all it is, unfortunately. What was the other one again? Short-term memory loss here. Iota, Doc. It's been a long week. Actually, it hasn't. It's been kind of a quiet week. Iota. This hourly chart's sitting pretty tight here. Same thing on the 4-hour chart. Potentially higher lows being formed there. So you got this low from last week. Maybe a low here again, right at the moving average here. Taking out what, 0.25 on the BTC pair or the USD pair on Iota. That might be something worth noting there. But again, big picture, still very much in a downtrend. Stocks. You guys want to go look at the stocks? Speaking of stock trading, let me pull up here. So when I do my stock charts, I actually have a separate preset that I use on some of these stock charts. Not that one. Not that. Okay, here, hold on. Breaking your eyes here. Sorry about that. And so I use a couple of things here. There's too many moving averages there. I generally don't have them all on. I use the VWAP, what they call the VWAP, which is the volume weighted average price, and then I use an anchored VWAP, which is the volume weighted average price from a certain point in time. And you can set that to basically whatever you want. An earnings report, the prior day open, prior day close, whatever you want. And so that's always interesting to see how price generally reacts above and below these two VWAPs. And the short run of it is, if it's above current day VWAP, generally the buyers are in control, because that means, the average buy price is, below the current trading price, right? And vice versa. If price is trading below the VWAP, then that means the sellers are kind of gaining control. And so when I'm looking at stocks, again, I'm looking at a 5-minute chart here. And that's because stock trading, at least for me, there's certainly swing trading and long-term holds and all that fun stuff. But at least for me, stock trading is on a very short time frame. 1-minute charts right at the open, 5-minute charts for the most part rest of the day. And you'd be surprised. I mean, it doesn't look like a whole lot, but once you start talking about leverage and you start talking about big share sizes, these 50, 60 cents, dollar moves really add up in a very short period of time, right? So if you're looking at a 5-minute chart, you don't have to be on a trade for very much time. Capitalize a quick swing like that. You factor in margin and all that stuff, and things can really happen. And then, of course, the thing I like about stocks, and people, you can certainly, I can understand why you'll debate this, but the thing that I like about stocks that you don't always get in crypto is the predictability, if you will. And I don't mean predictability in the sense of I know exactly what the price is going to do, but I mean predictability in the sense of volatility periods, meaning a general stock day, not always, but generally speaking, it's broken up into 3 parts. You kind of get the open, which is the highest volatile period, because you're factoring in news from the day before and all that stuff, and this is kind of the price discovery time. This is when most of the money is made in terms of short-term trading goes. And then you kind of get the midday, or you can even break this up into 2. You have the open and the late morning and then the midday, and then you get the close. A lot of times the close also offers some good trading opportunities. Sure, there's some good trading opportunities throughout the day, but when it comes to stock trading, my favorite is right here. It's right at the open. It's basically the the first hour and a half to 2 at most, and that's when some of the best moves happen, long and short. And on the stock side, I could really care less if it's long or short. You just want the volatility, and so that's my take on the stocks here. Going to the broader market here today, basically, relatively flat again here at the open. This is the SPY, so the S&P 500, just kind of relatively flat couple of days here. These nice trending days are nice if you trade the index. I generally don't trade the index. I look for stocks in play. When the market's going really crazy, when you see these big moves back and forth, when Trump's tweeting and there's trade war news and tariff news and all that, I will play the index. I generally don't play the SPYs. I'll do the Qs or some sort of Russell, IWM leveraged ETF. Beyond that, I look at the SPYs and the Qs as a barometer for kind of what the general market volatility is. But beyond that, I'll look at the individual names and generally we'll trade those because that's, you know, when there's earnings and all that fun stuff, that's where all the action is. So that's kind of my approach, and there's 1,000,001 ways to do this. Somebody was asking about the MJ sectors, right? So if you look at names like Kronos, we'll look at Tilray. I mean, they've pretty much have been on a downtrend for the most part this year. Many of them started their downtrend late last year after the October news, if you will. And again, remember, this was when, you know, Canada was going to legalize, and of course the typical price action kind of front run into the news. After the news, it's kind of the slow death. Tilray was among the names that was by far pumped the hardest, one of the, you know, the most overvalued names. And I remember in the Slack group we were watching this thing go up. It was up like, you know, to $300, and it was just insane how much it was moving every day. But here it is back down to 30. Some would argue even that's too high for a stock like this. And there's just, you know, there's so much supply in terms of new stocks coming into this group regularly. You know, it's the latest gold rush, and so everybody wants to throw their IPO out onto the market and pump it. So, you know, the trend has been chase kind of the newer names that are coming on because there's not as much supply and they get those little pumps. But, you know, even if you look at the broader ETF, right, the MJ ETF, here's the daily chart. You know, it has these nice rallies, and then it has the big crashes. Kind of reminds me of crypto, right? It's the hot money coming in, and then it's like everybody gets washed out. Maybe we're at a low point. Maybe we're ready for another, you know, several months of, all right, bouncing off of these lows. But this is the MJ ETF, right? And it doesn't have all of them in here, but it's kind of a good barometer for what the broader sector is doing. In terms of compared to the rest of the market, it doesn't really correlate, kind of lives to its own tone here. And, you know, this year has vastly underperformed the S&P and some of these other markets, right? If you look at names like the SPY, the Dow, I mean, they're just upward, and MJ is not. Look at gold, which is in pullback mode, by the way. We were talking about gold here, and I mentioned gold hitting the last target around that 1550 mark. I mean, almost to the penny it hit it. It is pulling back. We'll see how far back this pulls in before we start to see a little bit of resurgence there. This is the gold miners getting hit harder, of course. They tend to leverage the move on the way up and the way down, so no surprise you're getting this sharp pullback on the gold miners. All right, let's see here. Let's do a few more names. We'll get back to the crypto world, off the beaten path there a little bit. But I know a lot of you guys do watch some of these other markets, so it's all good. For those of you that don't, thanks for bearing with me and hanging tight here. In fact, I'm going to get off my my stocks chart. All right, let's do a few more here. Ethereum Classic. So the thing with Ethereum Classic here, that one, I will admit I'm kind of biased when it comes to this name. Generally, I don't trade it a whole lot anyway, just for whatever reason. I don't know if it just doesn't excite me. There's other, I trade just about every other altcoin, even if I don't know what the coin does or is, but whatever reason, Ethereum Classic. No offense if you're a fan, but it had the rally here a few days back or a couple weeks back. Again, this, in my opinion, was some front-running anticipation of the Atlantis hard fork, or, you know, upgrade, if you want to call it that. And since then, it's just kind of been drifting lower. I guess if you're watching this, certainly one thing to note here is it is starting to kind of coil up here on this consolidation. And so if it can break out of this little triangle range, then something worth watching there. But for me, it's just drifting lower. The hard fork's behind it now, so I think it was just gonna be a little bit of short-lived rally. Long term, you know, it's still been in this broader kind of sideways move. So not sure on this guy is what I'm trying to say. Not too sure. It's not a project I follow closely. It's not a coin I trade, and honestly, I'm not so sure it's gonna have a long-term real use case. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Ethereum Classic is going to be the use case, but I don't know. That's just me. near term, I mean, it's just drifting lower here either way. So 4-hour chart, if it starts to reverse, maybe. OMG. OMG. Let's go to OMG dollar. I'm going to zoom out here. OMG. And this bad boy here, remember when OMG was like at $13? I'm going to say that for every coin. You guys are going to hate me. Again, broader trend on the daily chart, still very much downward. No, no life showing up yet in terms of buying support here. And you get the MACD is just like going flat here, RSI, even as it drifts lower. One thing to note about uptrends and downtrends, and there was a good question posted around around volume and stuff. For a token or even a stock or any sort of kind of asset class that trades in a traditional market like we have here, right? Buyers and sellers auction market system. You don't need a lot of volume for price to continue to drift lower, because all you need is the lack of buying support. And if there's not a market, if there's not enough liquidity, anybody that wants to sell has to hit the bids, and the bids will continue to drop. And so in the long term, that's what you tend to see, right? Price can just keep drifting lower, even on low volume. On the way up, however, you do want to see volume expand as price rallies, because then that signifies there's more and more buyers coming in. And I mean, I know it's not, these are not tangible things, but it's kind of like physics, right? You need more and more pressure to push it up, 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 up. And you don't need a lot of pressure to just let it drop and let the price fall, right? And just let gravity take over. And that's actually a saying, right? When something gets overpriced, overvalued, you'll hear stock traders say it'll fall on its own weight, meaning at some point it's just overvalued, or there's just not enough buyers left to continue to drive price up. And if all the buyers just step aside, then price will fall on its own weight, even if there's not a lot of sellers, just because of the lack of liquidity. So hope that makes sense there. But I said all that to say this: you see so many of these altcoins continue to drop, and even if volume is light, you can say, oh, there's not enough, there's no sellers left, right? But that may not be the case. It's just may be that there's no more buyers showing up, and so the market is so thin, it just continues to drift lower. Now, at the extremes, after a long downtrend, after a big uptrend, volume spikes certainly matter. So if you see that kind of long, sharp drop, and then you see massive volume at the lows, that could be a sign of capitulation. That's certainly important, worth noting. On the way up, same thing, right? That buyer exhaustion, the climactic run up, when you see that massive volume spike and then a reversal, that's generally kind of the sign of a blow off top. So something to note there. There is no money flowing into these coins. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? It's just a lot of the coins, some of the initial project excitement has rubbed off and come off already. And, some of these projects have been around for several years now. And if there's not going to be, any new developments on them, it's going to take a little bit more to get buyers excited. People have been burned. There's a lot of reasons. The ICO craze is over, just all that stuff. All right, let's see here. Yeah, I remember the days when some of these names would just pump on rumors or a stupid Reddit post. The founder would post something and the name would rally. Or the founder would post a picture with him and Vitalik. Oh. All right, let's see here. Doge. Yeah, it is the canary. Oh, man. Cool. All right, guys. I'm just going to read the last of these comments here. I'm thinking we're probably good for the day, good for the week. Again, a little bit of a slower week, but just be aware. Things are going to shape up eventually. I think kind of going into Q4, we're still very much range bound. Could it continue to stay range bound? It sure could, but I'm a little bit more on the camp of this thing's going to break out either to the upside or to the downside sometime between now and October. Hopefully I'm right. We'll see. I don't want to see just boring sideways market for the next 2 months, but we'll see how that goes. It's funny, I did a poll on the Slack group, and this was when price was right at 10K, and I said, what's more likely to happen first? Price over 11,000 or price under 9,000? And the under 9,000 camp won. So we'll see if how that ultimately plays out here. The last several polls, the group has had pretty good track record, so I'm curious to see how this one plays out. I'm personally in the under 9,000 camp, just so you guys know, only because I think it'd be a good shakeout. Long term, I think this chart is actually very bullish, nice little consolidation here, but I think a shakeout and then a breakout would actually be much more positive. Shake out some of the longs, take out some stops, leave some people on the sidelines, and then take off. That's just generally the way markets do. They get people out at the worst time possible, and they suck people in at the worst time possible before the reversal. It's just because of human psychology. At the end of the day, these markets are just buyers and sellers. And so we'll see how these things play out. It'll be interesting to see when the volatility does come back in. So that's going to be it. All right, let's see here. Okay, guys. Well, it looks like we got a lot of folks on the stream. Kraken, I'm going to see that Kraken. Oops, sorry. Was it a BTC Kraken? Kraken wick? Oh, it's Kraken. Of course, it's XBT. Oh my god. Damn Kraken. I do use Kraken, but it just annoys me so much. Their UI is the worst, too. My goodness. Oh, Tim Draper, if you're listening, crack that whip. Oh my god. All right. So yeah, there you go. Darth Maul Kraken. If you had your stops in place, they're gone. Oh, well, with that happy note, my friends, we'll leave it there. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the likes. Thanks for the commentary. Have a great week, and until next time, take care, everyone.